My second question, did you have a least favorite gauntleter?
Oh,
Yes. Was it the guy that...
Welcome to the Just Submit podcast, where we talk about anything in AI and education. And because we cover those topics, we're thrilled to have Austen Allred on the pod. Now, to intro Austen for people who don't know, he's the founder of Gauntlet AI, and we can confirm that he is not a sex trafficker. I'm here with my good friends, Tim and Amelia. We're going to talk about that more in a second.
Solid intro. Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
But
Pretty spiky.
yeah, so let me explain why I mentioned that. So before Gauntlet, my parents told me to watch out in case it turned out to be sex trafficking, but I think it's safe to say that didn't end up happening. They told me to be careful because the promise sounded too good to be true. So Austen, can you tell people who don't know what was the promise of Gauntlet?
Yeah, the promise of Gauntlet AI was and is, we fly people into Austin from all over the world, train them to be at the cutting edge of AI and to stay on that cutting edge of AI. And then every graduate is guaranteed a $200,000 a year job, or more, of course. But
Sounds too good to be true.
yeah, it is pretty wild.
Yeah.
It took a lot for it to be true, and will take a lot for it to continue to be true. But as you are all evidence, I suppose, it was true. No sex trafficking involved, thank heavens. So yeah.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, the three of us are all Gauntlet graduates, and so I guess we're living proof that there is no sex trafficking, that this is not a rug pull, like everyone on Twitter said. Like, I remember like when you first tweeted about Gauntlet, I think back in like mid-December, right? Like, I remember thinking like this was an insane opportunity. It almost sounded a little too good to be true, but like the opportunity to learn with AI was just so intriguing to me that I was willing to take that risk. But I remember like you got so much flack on Twitter from people who were just like, holy shit, this is just a huge rug pull. He's, people are going to get defrauded or, things like that. How did you deal with that pressure? Like, just knowing that you had this whole army of people that you don't know of that are just talking crap about you and Gauntlet.
Yeah, I'm kind of used to that at this point. Like, there are a handful of people that follow me, and anything, like, it is an intentionally bold claim, right? Like the fact that hundreds of people are going to get $200,000 a year jobs and are going to come from all over the place, and without our sponsoring companies, it wouldn't have been possible. Like, there was no way you can start a Gauntlet and then go to a bunch of random companies and just beg them to, back it and make it happen. It was only because we had a relationship with those people and those companies for a long time, and they trusted us to build something with their requirements in mind, that it was possible to work at all. But I couldn't be mad at people who were skeptical, right? There were times when we talked about even more bold claims that we could make, but at a certain point it was like, we can't go beyond this, or it just becomes too insane.
What were some of the bolder claims you considered making?
Yeah,
that you didn't end up making?
now you got us really curious,
Yeah.
Austin.
I mean, we talked about, like, what if there's a big hiring bonus or a cash reward or something like that? But then you'd have to put in terms so that, like, those were contingent upon the employment. So it'd be like, then you get a big lump of cash up front, but only if you stay at the, and like that just gets sticky.
Yeah.
So a lot of the design of cohort 1 was actually from the student perspective, avoiding anything that looked like it might be a scam, even if it might have made slightly more sense to do. It just wanted to, there are all sorts of, in the future, we might have people sign more, different types of documents or do different stuff with IP or whatever else. But we just wanted to be so obvious that there was nothing that you could point at and say, like, oh, that's how they're going to get us. There was no catch. That, people like you could say, you know what? And I think the average person that I talked to in Gauntlet was like, all right, the job may or may not happen. We'll see. But, like, I'm going to go learn. I'll have a good time. I'll meet some new people. Worst case scenario, I'll just go back home. Which that would have been a disaster, obviously, if that were the case. But it's much, it's not like you guys owed a bunch of money or we had a bunch of, teeth into you in some way. So it was relatively clean.
Yeah. How did you feel about it before Amelia, because we know what Spencer felt. He was afraid it was going to be sex trafficking. I was excited.
Yeah.
My parents were
Not
afraid.
because I thought it was sex trafficking. I was just excited in general. Yeah.
Well, I heard about Gauntlet from my dad. He sent me Austin's ex post. He was like, you should totally do this. I'm a sophomore in college at this point, and I was like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
I think we were all super skeptical of it, and just as it went along, we were all, in the remote portion, we're all like, okay, this might happen, but, might not go to Austin. And then it just kept coming true, like the promises. Okay, so we're all being flown out to Austin, we're all getting these rooms to stay in, okay, the food, we're getting our food paid for, transportation, okay, it's actually all coming true. And that's what made me feel like, okay, now the job might happen. Because I feel like that's initially what everyone looked at Gauntlet for, was the job after. But then throughout it was like, okay, even if the job doesn't happen, this was still an amazing experience.
Yeah, fair enough. I got to say, you're one of my favorite stories out of the people at Gauntlet.
Thank
because
you.
like Amelia's 19 years old, she's sophomore in college, hears about this program, and just dropped out of college, right? Or technically, I took a leave of absence.
I took a semester off.
Yeah, that's dropping out.
Yeah.
In my book. So you get to be one of those, like, I dropped out of college to go, do some cool things in tech, like Mark Zuckerberg or whatever.
It always starts out taking that leave of absence for a semester. I'll come back next semester, maybe.
Never again.
I mean, it's a good, like, on a serious note, that's the way I dropped out of college too. Like, it's always a two-way door. You can go back if you want to. So I think it's more likely to happen that you drop out of college if you don't think of it as this big, like, I am never going,
that's fair.
Cross the Rubicon, I'm never going back. It's like, all right, I'm going to take a semester off. We'll see if this thing that I'm working on develops. And if it does, then I don't have to go back. But if it totally falls flat, then I'll go eat crow and tell my parents they were right, and I'll go back. And that's basically what happened to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So did you also? So you dropped out just to start a company, or amazing? And was that Lambda or something?
No, it was
something
before.
else?
Yeah.
Interesting. Because I think I recall you alluding to that you had done other stuff obviously before getting into education, right? But that's so cool.
Yeah.
Man, I didn't know. Jesus, me and Spencer are the losers here. We graduated college. We have these two like geniuses over here. No, but Amelia is one of my favorite stories for that reason, because it's like dropping out of college, big deal, and then you come here and there's like tons of other, like, that's one of the biggest draws of Gauntlet, was just like the people, right, in the program, for me at least, and like the diverse stories of people. Like, you have like the most galaxy brain people in the world, and then like and then someone like me, just normal, I don't know, but like, we have David as well, who's like a Target security guard, right?
Mm-hmm.
He says it himself. He was like, I was making minimum wage at Target, and I was just working on Replit on my spare time, and he got into the program, and now he's crushing it. So I guess that's one thing I'm always going to be grateful to you, Austin, for the rest of my life, is just giving me, and I think all of us, the opportunity to just be in the same room to like learn by osmosis, right?
Well, it's funny because I'm in the same boat, right? Yeah. Like, we put all this together, but I had never been in an environment quite like that. I mean, none of us had been, obviously. Yeah. We're flying, 100 people in from all over the place, and we all get to know each other, and slowly the relationships form. And I'm still like, I just remember on day one, because I had only ever run education stuff online. I'd never been really in person in any material way with people. I mean, we'd have like meetups or go to dinner, and that was really rewarding when you get to be with people in person, because as you all saw, it's just a very, very different experience.
Yeah.
I think if the entirety of Gauntlet would have been entirely online, it would have been not quite the same, I think it's fair to say.
Yep.
But yeah, bringing like everybody you talk to is so smart and so interesting and so passionate and so hardworking. Like the thing that definitely worked was the selection bias of Gauntlet, bringing in really smart, really motivated, really interesting people was really, really cool. And so I didn't know if that was going to be true or not originally. We had theory, but when we got to meet everybody, that was like, oh wow, this is awesome.
Yeah, it was. I think one thing from having all these intelligent people in the room was, if you're like, for anyone listening who's thinking about applying to Gauntlet, like if you're someone who considers yourself intellectually curious, then I think, and obviously you like AI, you want to learn AI, then like Gauntlet is the place to be, because you will hear and random things from some of the smartest people in the world, and I speak from experience. Like I would hear these things and I would have no idea, but I would be curious about them, and I'd go down the rabbit hole, and I learned so much just from being in the room with Spencer and Amelia and other people at Gauntlet, and it was insane. Like I never been any, like, it's like you said, you've never seen anything like it before, right?
Yeah.
So I'm super curious how it's going to turn out for cohort 2, right? Because it essentially it's going to be a little bit different profile. Like for example, with cohort 1, it's IQ, obviously high agency, but also high risk taking, because there was no Gauntlet before, right? Like everyone called us a scam, and so we had to take that risk. Whereas cohort 2, like that risk factor it's not significant, right? Because I mean it's there.
I'd say it's,
but it's not.
It's much
there.
less than going from 0 to 1 means a lot.
Yeah. So like now, there's obviously going to be more similarities between cohort 1 and cohort 2 than we think, but there are going to be some, I imagine, some key differences as well. So super excited to see how it comes out, because I think you guys are making it harder.
Well, so
to get in, is that right?
Harder isn't the way that I would think about it, actually. So with cohort 1, we had our sponsoring companies wanted a mix of levels of experience. Yeah. They wanted people who had virtually zero programming experience, who could learn fast enough to get there, and they wanted people who were super senior, the Leeways of the world, who's another good example, people with like 25 years of engineering experience,
like Uzair, Y Combinator graduate, phenomenal. Like I didn't even know that until like the second week we were there. I'm like, dude, you're a Y Combinator graduate, and I mean, I thought that was a perfect
that was, I reviewed all the applications, but then when I met the people, like they didn't all map together in my mind. So I'd be talking with someone, they're like, I was at like Facebook for 5 years, right? And I was like, I should have known that, but no, I didn't.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
there's a few actually.
Multiple.
I didn't even know that. There were several.
Yeah. People were not leading with credentials very often at Gauntlet,
which is amazing,
which was really cool.
Like no one was like, oh yeah, I was at this FANG company super high up for years. It's just like, we're just here to learn about AI, right?
Yeah.
It's not really like status driven. Like,
no, not at all.
And that's amazing though, because like we kind of live in we don't kind of live in, but like, obviously status is a consideration with social media and all that stuff.
Oh, for sure.
It's a big deal.
Sure. Yeah, but as I was saying, so as we bring in more and more hiring companies, they want, the way I would describe it is, the original sponsoring companies saw and bet on, and I think they were right to do so, with people that didn't have experience. Some of the new companies that we don't have the same relationship with, that they don't, frankly, they're not as cutting edge with AI. They're viewing things through a more traditional lens, and we're trying to like help them understand what the world means with AI. So they're skewing more toward, here are my traditional hiring requirements, find people that meet those guidelines, and now we have enough credibility that we can, and there are going to be way more applicants, and there are going to be people that we accept, which was true last time, but it's going to be an order of magnitude more applications. But we're optimizing for getting more hiring companies to see what it's like, and we're actually being really selective within the hiring companies too. So it just changes the profile slightly. So we will probably have fewer people with, virtually no experience coming in. But if it were me making all the decisions and doing all the hiring, that is a bet that I would make all day. I just don't have enough time to convince everybody of that yet.
Yeah. Are you looking for like more hiring partners in the pipeline? Are you trying to add? Because it seems like there may be.
Yeah, we're having conversations. The thing that I would say, yes, we are, but we're being very particular with what we're looking for. So if all we were looking for are people to write checks to us to hire people, there's a lot of that.
Interesting.
But as an example, think of like a big, really old, really legacy company comes to us and they say, we want to hire from Gauntlet. And I say, okay, what's going to happen when you do hire, somebody? And they're like, well, they'll join an engineering team and, they'll be the go-to person to go to with AI questions. I'm like, oh, they're going to quit instantly. Like, that's not going, that's oil and water, right?
Yeah.
Like, unless you can find a way to actually make the organization move quickly and adopt AI, and not just like, if you have an old legacy team that's not going to touch AI, and then you have the Gauntlet person dropped in there to be, hey, that's the AI nerd, like that's not a successful hire.
And do you feel like that's the expectation that more of these hiring potential partners are coming into this with?
It depends.
Are they more discerning than you expect, I guess?
Yeah, it totally depends, and it's not along the lines that I would have expected.
Interesting.
Like, there are companies that are really good at engineering without AI, and there are companies that are really bad at engineering without AI, right?
Yeah.
So if you were to look 5 years ago, who's really good with an engineering culture, who's really bad, my base expectation coming in was that everybody who had a good engineering culture would have a good AI culture. And it's not inversely true. It's not necessarily people that have bad engineering culture have good AI culture, but there are some times when the analogy I use is, if you look at Africa still to this day has very, very little Wi-Fi, because they kind of missed the Wi-Fi boat, but then the 5G and 3G and 4G boat got so good so fast that they just completely leapfrogged all of that. There are some companies that are completely leapfrogging all of the best practices of traditional engineering, and they're just going straight to AI. And that's rare, but that does exist. And some of the companies that have spent the most time figuring out their traditional engineering culture, their software engineering culture, they have like organ rejection level of nobody uses AI within the company. There are some that, it's a big ship to turn, but like the Shopifys and the Stripes of the world, like they're starting to use AI. They all have people with deep experience. But there are companies that are known for having good engineering culture that there is virtually no AI happening within the org, which is crazy to everybody in this room, but that's the reality.
I came from a company that was very hostile to AI.
Yeah, tell us about that. What was that like?
Yeah, it was a big reason why I wanted to do Gauntlet. So as soon as I saw your first tweet about it, I was like, oh my God, this is literally the perfect program for me. Because at my company, I was always trying to evangelize AI. I was saying, hey, we should use these models. We should try out this technology. I would tell my manager we should do a certain project. And my manager's just like, no, that won't fly in the organization. All the execs are lawyers rather than technologists.
I was going to say, was it an IP privacy legal risk concern? Was it a technical concern? Because those are very different, depending like where the objection to AI comes from.
I think mostly legal risk. It was an insurance company.
Yep.
And all the insurance rates that we publish to the government, to the departments of insurance, they have to be actuarially sound.
Yep.
And so if you have AI anywhere in that process, it makes it actuarially unsound, according to them. So it was good to get out of that environment and into an environment where everyone loves AI.
Yeah. So as an example, if that company came to me and said, hey, we want to hire engineers, it's like, well, can they use, well, they can't use, any models. Maybe they can like download Llama and use that like off on their own little side projects thing, but nothing touching our main code base. You're like, okay, that's not.
We couldn't even download models onto our work machines.
Yeah, okay. That's even more extreme than most, but yeah, it's pretty wild.
But yeah, I'd love to ask, for the next cohort, do you plan to look at resume stuff like years of experience to see someone's coding ability, or is it just going to be test-based?
There's what I want to be true, and then there's what will likely be true. I think that I'm a big believer in completely ignoring resumes, and most of my best hires and all of the like if you want to actually play Moneyball in this hiring market, and really in any environment, finding people whose resume doesn't look like the perfect resume, who are really smart, is 100 times. I would hire that way every day. And then there are some companies where they want that, but their HR department says, but we only hire people who meet criteria XYZ, which they don't realize eliminates so many great people. So there's a little bit of a balance. But the way that I have to think about it, at least in the short term, is, I have a bunch of different customers on the other side. Now, the customers who are like, I want to be strict with resumes and somebody must have X, Y, Z. So one example would be, people like, hey, I will hire anybody from Gauntlet who has gone to a top 10 U.S. university, right? Mm-hmm. There are those people, right? And we can find plenty of those people. That's not the way that I would be selecting if I were a company, but I can accommodate that. There's a balance. I think the resume specific hires is probably 10% of the pool. So the vast majority of it is just going to be test-based.
Gotcha.
I'm a big believer in standardized tests. Like, among the biggest believers you'll ever meet in the virtues and value of standardized testing.
What was your CCAT?
I don't even know.
Oh, that's such a cop-out.
I know.
You know that's such a cop-out.
I need to take it. I literally don't know if I would get into Gauntlet.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, CCAT is like a general intelligence exam that's a requirement for being on Gauntlet or being accepted into Gauntlet.
Yeah, there are a bunch of different tests that test different factors of general intelligence. I mean, some are correlated with IQ, some are correlated with other stuff. In some ways, the SAT and SAT, more so 10 years ago than today, were testing for a bunch of different. You're trying to find raw horsepower of who can learn stuff quickly. At least that's what we're trying to find. So there are a bunch of different tests that test for that and different criteria. But for the first iteration of Gauntlet, we used the CCAT, which is a test by Criteria Corp. And I believe 97th and above percentile was our cutoff. Yeah. And that's very hy. That's approaching the level of not useful because it's so high. But I think if you were to walk around Gauntlet and compare that to just the average, if you were to take a random sampling of people who applied to Gauntlet versus what Gauntlet actually was, you would instantly be able to tell the difference. And I think you guys you may notice that just by being in Gauntlet, that everyone here is really smart.
Yeah.
And that's not, we didn't, I will say, for the first cohort of Gauntlet, I didn't even look at resumes. I literally didn't look.
Yeah.
Don't care.
It was just raw CCAT and
raw test score.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I mean, some of those scores were just absurd. Like, people, we would talk about it, right? And
yeah.
Of course, you could literally say anything, but then you would see who the person, so we had someone who said they got a 49.
There are people who were 99.99 percentile.
Yeah, that is the most ridiculous score having taken the CCAT probably 5 times, like three times with Gauntlet and twice in employment, like applying for jobs. That is such an absurdly high score. But it's just a testament, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to ask Amelia and Tim.
Yeah.
Was there ever a time you thought about dropping out of Gauntlet?
Ooh.
I like that.
Punt that one off to you, Missy, first.
Not really. I mean, when I applied, I did not think I was getting in at all, especially because I passed the CCAT, right? And I completely failed the coding one. I got a 1 out of 4, so I was just closed my laptop. Okay, I'm not getting in.
For the first cohort.
Right? I did not think it was going to be so heavily based on the CCAT, so I just didn't think I was getting in at all. And then I get in and do the remote portion, come to Austin. It was just awesome throughout all of it. I mean, I think second week, I was having issues because I came into Gauntlet with 3 college computer science courses in my head, and
I was gonna say you're underselling a little bit how difficult that is.
yeah,
Just to like
crazy.
how much you have to learn just to keep your head above water, with that being your background. I mean, there are people who can do it. It's not. I don't think it's average for someone with that level of experience to be able to get to where you are that quickly is nuts. So
yeah.
hats off. That's crazy.
Thank you. I guess that's why the CCAT was so important. I mean, Gauntlet's such, like, you need to be a problem solver in Gauntlet for sure. But, like, second week I was having so much trouble, and I don't know, just gotta push through. And then it was all pretty awesome for the rest of the time.
Yeah, so
How about you guys?
for me, I didn't really think I was ever gonna drop out willingly, but I gotta give you credit, Austin. You did make my relationship with God a lot closer for a week, because there was 1 week where I was like, I'm so cooked. I'm like, dude, I'm gonna get cut. Like, I was freaking out, right? Because it was the first week, and I literally did 26 hours of vibe coding because I was so terrified of this deadline, right? Because things were ambiguous, right, in the beginning. You guys obviously were figuring stuff out about how to really evaluate people, but like from a participant perspective, like, we didn't know that, so we were just like, what do they expect?
Well, and you guys,
What are the metrics that they're gonna cut us? And I was praying to God. I was like, God, if you let me pass, like,
totally.
get my life straight.
We had I hesitate to even say this but I had a list of people that were on probation, which was we didn't call it probation obviously, but it's like, hey, you need to check in with me every 12 hours, and we're gonna.
That was me.
Every 12 hours.
So you were on probation.
That's why, yeah. So then that happened, and then I was like, okay, I have, a rolling 24-hour period where I got to show up. So that gave me confidence to just keep going. And then eventually, I think on the 3rd day, you were like, you just stopped responding, because I think you were just like, yeah, you're okay, right? But
do you want to know the number of people who got on probation and later got off of probation without being removed or dropping out was small.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man. Well,
I'm glad
amazing.
you didn't know that back then.
Yeah, no, I didn't know. I think I was having issues with deploying my app,
and that was
the big one.
Yeah,
and I think
that was
you were
everybody
just
in the first couple of weeks.
Yes.
So I'm like, yeah, okay.
Well, I'm glad that it worked out for me at least. But
yeah, but for me, it's like, okay, you're having trouble deploying.
Yeah.
What is that like? Sometimes that's a cop out too, right?
No,
like,
no.
Oh yeah,
100%.
it's working really well locally. I'm like, okay, I don't care.
Yeah.
And
that's kind of what you told me too. You're like, yes, good luck.
Yeah.
But
It's funny you mentioned the thing about Austin not responding, because I remember so many people were anxious about, if they're not sending messages back, what does that mean? And it turns out you were so busy at the beginning with over 200 people.
Yeah.
If you didn't get a message from Austin or an instructor, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think once people realized that, they were able to chill a little bit more.
Yeah. But I will say that, like, I also took the CCAT too, and I pretty much flunked the coding one. I only got the first question right.
Yeah.
And I have a software engineering background. I just hadn't coded in years, and I got my acceptance email the day before Christmas Eve. Best Christmas present ever. I was so happy because I was like, I'm excited, right? And then, then you start the gauntlet and it's like, holy crap, right? Like we're tasked to do a lot in a short amount of time, right? But I think like any boot camp, because I've done another boot camp in the past, it's always, well, not it's always, but for a lot of people, I feel like you struggle a lot and then you hit this like breaking point of like, it clicks. And once it clicks, then things just start to level out in terms of stress, because like, man, if I can get past this point, I'll be okay. So that's kind of been my journey about it.
Amelia, if you could change something about the next cohort of Gauntlet, what advice would you have for Austin about what should Gauntlet do better?
I think for me, going in with no experience, and I guess this isn't as relevant to the next cohort, but you just threw me in the deep end, and that's okay. Obviously, that's what you
Very
wanted to do.
He's like loving it. He's like, this is going on social media.
Yeah.
This short is going on social media.
Everyone was like, "Oh, what tech stack should we use?" I was like, "Stag. What's a stag?" Like, my program's only outputted to the terminal, like 2 files maximum. I just had never done anything like that.
That's incredible.
The breadth that you had to cover to get to where you are now is just, yeah.
And so, for me, my first week I used Replit because it's more automated, right? Like, it dealt with the database for me. It dealt with, you need to use WebSockets. Like, here you go. So, I feel like that kind of eased me into it a little more. So, it was just, with the lack of experience, it was
I wonder what it would have been like if you didn't start using Replit. Or, I mean, and like, that's a fortuitous AI choice to have made, because there could have been different platforms and stacks you could have picked that would have made it more difficult. And Replit, like, you know, what Replit is really good at is getting whatever you have deployed and available and stuff like that.
Yes,
so,
everyone was talking about their troubles deploying. I just clicked a button.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
I actually watched your demo. So like for people that don't know, you were supposed to post like a video of your what you have every week on Twitter. I remember watching your demo, and I was like, and this is when I thought I was cooked. I was like, oh, I'm so screwed. I'm like,
oh really?
Because I was jealous. I was like, damn, like she's further than I am, and I don't mean that as a knock on you. It's just you're trying to compare yourself against other people to understand where you are relative to your peers. And but yeah, that's Replit was probably I think Replit, like, that's how I got started with vibe coding. Replit just did a lot. Right?
But I think one of the things that may not be as obvious to you guys, but I've been running programming schools for almost a decade now. Wow. Right? So I'm very, very used to, I had a very strong mental model of what you could expect somebody to do in a reasonable amount of time. I knew what good looked like. I knew what bad looked like. I knew what the gaps were going to be. AI flips that all on its head. Yeah. Like in the old world, like if your stuff was working well, that meant your back end was well written and your front end was connected to it. And if you made it look good, you were going above and beyond. And then, in AI land, stuff would look good half the time out of the box, and I would be the stuff that in my mind I was like, oh, that's the difficult part was the easy part sometimes. And sometimes what I thought was the easy part was actually the difficult part, like moving pixels around on the screen and adding more features that didn't really work is super easy. Making it work really well and be stable and like that's harder than it was relative to what I'm used to. So I had to retrain myself to understand, okay, in vibe coding land, what's easy, and then, okay, if you can build stuff with vibe coding, what do you have to do to make it actual shippable product beyond, for a handful of users. And I was retraining my brain the whole time and understanding what is reasonable, what expectations are reasonable versus unreasonable was so hard for me to wrap my mind around. I toward the end, I was getting it, but like, and it was easy to just say, yeah, anything can be done in 24 hours, right? But what's easy and what's difficult was so different with AI than without it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Was there anything interesting about the culture that you saw coming out from like putting all of us in this big room working 80 to 100 hours a week? Like anything that you were like, man, I did not expect this at all. Like, this is really cool.
I wouldn't say
something that surprised you.
Yeah,
I guess.
There's anything that I didn't expect necessarily, because I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah, I guess everything. Yeah.
I mean, there are fewer problems like interpersonal than I thought there were going to be.
That's
like
actually a great point.
People weren't arguing and like mad at each other. Like even I'm used to running schools remotely, and there was more of that in a remote environment than there was at Gauntlet, which is I mean, I was anticipating all sorts of problems with everybody living in the same place, and there are a couple things, but nothing material, honestly. So that was a little bit surprising. And then on the good side, I think the one thing that we did really, really well at Gauntlet for sure is I feel like to a person, everybody at Gauntlet felt like you could do anything. You could do it quickly, and there weren't the like, so I would go from Gauntlet and then go talk to like traditional engineering teams. You guys would just see me like leave the building and not know what's going on, but I go and talk to somebody and I'm like, hey, let's talk about integrating AI and what Gauntlet is, and you start like every conversation is just friction, and then okay, let's figure out how to do something. It's just reason it can't be done. Gauntlet, there was none of that. And the thing I think I'm most proud of is that we created a culture where that was the expectation.
Yeah.
And when I talk about the second cohort, that's one of the things that I'm the most protective of, is I don't want to take that spirit and then drop it into a place where it's just going to die overnight, because it is difficult to keep going. And it takes a lot of effort. And then I think you kind of realize how much of human existence is just people waiting around looking at each other, where if you were, if you want to push things forward, you actually can, just nobody is.
Yep.
So yeah, that was really, really cool to see.
Yeah, there's one thing that I tell, so I always try to get my friends to dive into AI as much as possible, and I always tell them there's really only two limitations to getting to whatever you want out of life nowadays, and it's literally your creativity and your willingness to sit in a chair and to learn with AI, right? Those are the only limitations now. So there's almost there's no excuse, right? To be a better engineer, to be a better marketer, to be a better entrepreneur. I'm not saying LLMs will do everything for you, but it'll guide you a lot of the way, right? And it's up to you.
Well, that was the other thing that was fascinating, coming from a more traditional education background, and we can talk about work smart or not, but for those who are unfamiliar, we had software on pretty much everybody's computer, so we could see what they were doing and how they were doing it at any time of the day. But we could analyze what you were doing on your computer with AI, and I could identify gaps that people had and weak spots, and we could, use AI to build curriculum as a result of that. So to a person, I could be like, okay, Joe is really good at XYZ and really bad at ABC, and he's working on ABC by doing, 1, 2, 3. Having that as someone who's used to just seeing how people turn in assignments and grading assignments, it's 100 times more rich, and that was super, super cool. I wasn't flying blind, which is very rare for someone who's used to education. I would know exactly what everybody was working on every minute of every day if I wanted to. That's super rare.
That's intense for sure.
Yeah.
To have that level of insight
Yeah.
for that many people, your fingertips, crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I have two questions. So some people have debated what to call participants of Gauntlet. I personally say Gauntleters, but I want to know what your vote is.
I like Gauntleters, actually.
Gauntleters.
There are people who are religiously opposed to that for some reason. But yeah, the decisions that I need to make are Gauntlet. I did formally say Gauntlet AI has a space in it.
Okay.
Gauntlet
Okay.
space AI.
Okay. I like that.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
We can deal with that.
Yeah, it's actually on the back of your shirt. That's how
Yeah.
it is. But it was used kind of interchangeably.
Yeah.
And then what we're gonna call ourselves is the other thing. I like Gauntleter, but
What do y'all think?
I like Gauntleter. I
I'm
know.
okay with Gauntleters.
I
Honestly,
know people like Challengers, but
Challengers is another good
Yeah.
one. We spend way too much time debating over internal project or business unit names,
Yep.
which is
Oh
why
my gosh.
I'm more of a dude. Let's just make a decision, and you don't need my vote. I'll just go with whatever everyone else goes with. So that's how I operate.
Yeah. My second question, did you have a least favorite Gauntleter?
oh,
yes.
Was it the guy that wigged out in the first week on the Slack and just started saying the most crazy unhinged?
No, I think that was actually.
That was an epic level
That
troll.
was I think that was actually a mental breakdown.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think so too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Never mind. I did not know that.
Yeah.
I apologize.
No, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's all I'm gonna say.
Oh, okay.
a mental breakdown because of Gauntlet.
I mean, there were...
But no, I think he had prior issues.
Yeah, there were some... there were emails that I kind of... Like, you give it the benefit of the doubt, but look, after you see the problems start to arise, you go back and like, oh, okay, there's... You know, that is... I'm really grateful that we had the remote portion first instead of flying everybody to Austin and figuring it out then. Obviously, you know, my bias is it's just so much easier to weed people out and to have people decide if they're committed or not in that portion. But, and obviously way less expensive to do it that way. But you know, it would be brutal to do an open application Gauntlet style program where the first interactions are all in person and we don't get a chance to do stuff online first, which I think is, I don't know, maybe that's just because that's the only way I've ever done it, but I can't even imagine just flying everybody to Austin and figuring it all out. I mean, by the time we flew to Austin, obviously you didn't know everybody, but you had a couple people that you knew, that you'd interacted with, like you kind of had a starting point, and I think that's pretty cool, actually.
I think the setup was great, to be honest. I was a little surprised by how many people got cut or dropped out, though. Mm-hmm. Like, of the people, how many, like, of the 50, 60% that were not at the in-person event, how many of them just straight dropped out?
I mean...
Was it larger than people that got cut? Because I feel like our perception of it was that people just dropped out. They were just like,
definitely.
This is a scam. We don't even want to go check it out in person.
It's probably 75% dropout, 25% removed.
That's insane.
I mean, the first week, there were so many people that were like, "Oh, you actually expect us to do those hours?" Like that was the big. You know, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, big like scary time commitment thing, whatever." Yeah. And then they'd come to me like, "So when can I fit my part-time job in?" I'm like, "It literally is physically impossible to do your part-time job," you know. And they're like, yeah, you said that when I asked you before, but I thought I'd still be able to sneak it in. It's like, yeah.
I quit my job literally on January 6th on the first day of the remote portion.
That's awesome.
I quit my part-time job. Like, literally, I was just helping out someone, and I quit, like, that second Monday.
There were a bunch of people that...
I was like, there's no way, dude.
Yeah. There were... But everybody who was trying to hedge their bets really quickly realized that you've got to pick one way or another.
There's one person who did it successfully.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he's a wild child. Shout out to him. Big man
his
Ting.
Job, he just skated by in his...
Yeah, frankly, he scammed the people that he was working for.
He's going to watch this and enjoy this one.
Yeah.
I won't name any names.
Yeah, that was...
shout out, you know who you are.
Yeah, shout out, you know who you are. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know what was on his computer, and he was working for Gauntlet more than 100 hours a week. Yeah. So supposedly working a job on the side, that there's some ethical stuff that we need to work through there. But
yeah,
I think the end of this is not big, but there were people who were experienced engineers who were, you know, so for those of you that don't know, week one, we say, you're not writing any code. AI has to write all of the code. I know you're going to hate it, especially if you're, honestly, the better of an engineer you are, the more you hate it. Whereas if
I definitely hated it.
Yeah. Compliment to you then. But there were some people that were just like, this AI stuff is all, this sucks.
Yeah.
It's never going to be real.
Crazy though.
Or like, the AI code is so sloppy, I just can't, even if it works, I can't operate in this environment. I'm just going to go back to writing code. There are a handful of those.
Yeah.
There were some people who there were expectation misalignments of like, I thought that we were going to learn how to like build LLMs and do like deep research of AI. Mm-hmm. Every time we try to convey as well as we could, like, no, we're applying AI to what exists. We're not like, there's maybe times when someone's kind of, you know, on the edge of AI and pushing it forward a little bit, but we're not trying to compete with OpenAI or XAI or Anthropic or anything like that. You know, we're customers of what those guys are building, and it's so great to be a customer and just let them innovate and then use it all. It's 100 times better. so there are some people that, and there's a little bit of a bifurcation in like the AI space where some people are like deep machine learning, but not generative AI, and they wanted to get better at the machine learning part. And I'm honestly pretty bearish on most machine learning stuff relative to how bullish I am on generative AI, LLM powered stuff. But yeah, I think the average person who dropped out just couldn't hang for one reason or another. And I totally get why.
Yeah, that's fair.
Do you have any spicy takes on the Palantir Fellowship? Because it seems similar to Gauntlet. By the way, if anyone involved in that wants to come on the pod, that'd be great. But yeah, I saw Palantir Fellowship in the news. I'm wondering if you have spicy takes.
We've been talking with Palantir. Nothing's come out of it yet. But I think they see the world in a similar way to us. They're definitely watching us. I'm somewhat paying attention to what they're doing. But I would be surprised if we don't work with Palantir at some point in the future. Just because we view the world similarly enough. I think it's honestly just a matter of me talking to a few people over there where those conversations haven't happened yet, but who knows? Yeah, I think they're watching us, we're watching them. We view the world similarly. They would be one of the best customers. They need what we have so much. They don't fully realize it all the way, but they're watching. They're paying attention.
Yeah. I also want to talk about education broadly, since that's what we're all about. You are competing with education, with colleges, I mean, and you dropped out of college. So what are your thoughts on college?
I feel like right now, especially with computer science, like that was my major. I personally was very AI first in my classes, ahead of the curve. But yeah, colleges hate that, and
Wow.
that's why Gauntlet is so great, because it encourages it so much. And because colleges hate that, when someone graduates right now with a computer science degree, they're gonna like not be as good of developers as I am right now, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have to get on the AI wagon to be successful right now. I mean, that's my opinion, but
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. It's just become even more clear over time, right? And when I say over time, it's not like I'm talking about a period of like a year or 2 years. It's a period of when we've even first heard of Gauntlet back in December up until now, right? But that's how fast things move in AI, right? Like, no one can really afford to sit on their laurels, and I'm afraid. I mean, I'm afraid for college students, like graduates. Like, if you're unable to use the most innovative tech of human history to advance your personal or professional goals, then how are you expected to succeed in a professional environment?
yeah, if colleges don't allow AI, then getting a computer science degree almost means close to nothing right now.
Insane.
But I don't think they will in the near future.
Most won't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I have empathy toward what they're facing, because first of all, even though, I mean, computer science programs were already 10 years behind, but that didn't really matter because, okay, you learn slightly sexier languages or newer frameworks. If you're good at computer science, you pick that up. It all tastes like chicken. It's fine. If you can, we'll teach you Java. You may not be good at JavaScript or Python. Doesn't freaking matter. If you're good at, you can figure it out. This is a fundamental shift in the way things are done and the way things are built, but in such a way that you are a better engineer using AI if you understand computer science fundamentals, and they're going to purely focus on the computer science fundamentals part because they see AI as a tool that lets you cheat and not have to learn the computer science fundamentals. If they were in my opinion. If they were really smart about it, they would start at the you would start vibe coding, and then you would work your way down the stack until you reach, and you still cover the same computer science fundamentals, but they're built so bottom up that in order for them to make sure that you are learning everything that you need to, AI is just a tool you use to cheat until maybe the very end. But honestly, my guess would be the median CS program is just going to say, we're proctoring all of our stuff, and if you use AI, you get kicked out or you fail or whatever. And I understand why they do that. Obviously, it's a losing strategy, and students are going to figure out enough AI stuff on their own to keep their heads above water. But it's like at a macro environment, that's scary. Like the employability of a computer science grad who has not touched AI is shockingly close to zero right now.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's insane because that's happened in probably less than 2 years, right? Well, when did LLM assisted coding come out?
I mean,
Probably
it's
1
probably
year.
been in the last year, maybe the last 6 months.
Last 6 months, right? To have that sea of change happen so fast is just
it's
insane.
not fair. Yeah. And the other thing is, like, something that we've talked about a decent amount, in Gauntlet, is the half-life of the education that you learn, right? Like, my dad studied accounting, and he worked the same couple jobs his entire career, and the information that he needed to do that didn't really change.
Yeah.
There are still careers where that's true, right? But if you're in computer science, like, every 6 months, I mean, I already feel like I have to go and hang out with Gauntlet people because I'm not spending as much time with AI as you all are. And it was crazy how Gauntlet ended, and my wife was like, hey, we're going on vacation. I haven't seen you for months. So we took a week after Gauntlet ended, we took a few days, and I came back and I was like, shoot, like I'm out of the loop now.
Yeah.
And then I realized that that's how 99% of the world, even if they don't realize it, you are out of the loop if you're not, like, actively every day staying up to date. That is new. It used to be, I mean, I would have to rewrite our curriculum every year, and then it became every 6 months. But it was little tweaks, it was little changes. Now it changes so drastically. I mean, think about now versus January when we started Gauntlet.
insane.
Completely different world.
Completely different
And
preferences for LLMs.
Yeah, I mean, I know what our curriculum is for the first weeks. It's all worthless now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was as cutting edge as we possibly could be in January.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. And, to be honest, by the end of Gauntlet, we were still teaching stuff, but you guys didn't really care because anything that you wanted to learn, you could learn so fast. And even if our lessons were on what had happened the last week, that was already old news for you guys.
Yeah.
Getting you to that point, we have to kind of bootstrap that and jumpstart it. But the traditional college environment, I mean, they have to go through freaking the accreditors it's a multi-year process to enable material change to curriculum. They can't, by law, radically change the way they do things. That sucks.
Their problem, your opportunity, though, right?
Yeah. I mean,
That's exactly
I'm glad
what
I'm
I was
not in their
saying.
shoes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think Gauntlet's the best program that ever happened in my life, So I'm happy to even be here to give the opportunity to talk about this for other people who are on the fence. Because didn't you guys just open up applications?
Yeah, a couple
yesterday,
days ago.
right? Or
Yeah.
a couple days ago. I've already had an old college friend I hadn't seen in like 4 years. He's a software engineer in Yahoo, and we had a 45-minute convo about Gauntlet. And I just did the hard press. I was like, this is the best thing ever. But I don't think it was a reluctance about the program. It's obviously people have lives in certain situations, but. I've definitely had random people hit me up about the program. And, I
That's
hope
awesome.
the best candidates come through just so I can compete with them.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. No, I just want to see. I want to see the caliber of people, right? Like I know the caliber of people that we graduated with, and I'm excited that you get to interact with another group of how many are you trying to accept, by the way? Is there a number? Because for us, it was like, I think we started with 230, and we whittled down to like 130 or 115 at the end.
Yeah, 110, 115, somewhere in there. Yeah, I think we're gonna. So the other big difference between the two cohorts, this may be TMI, but the last cohort was sponsored by the sponsoring companies. They covered flights and hotels and all of that stuff. But as a result of that, they wanted to be really the only people who could hire.
Yeah.
Well, that was kind of the trade-off. So in order for us to enable more people, now I'm fronting all of the costs for everything.
Oh.
So it may end up being a smaller cohort by virtue of I have less money than the sponsoring companies. Actually, significant. I mean, you know some of the sponsors.
Yeah. We will leave it at that.
I am not a billionaire.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah.
We'll get you there.
So it will probably be smaller because of that more than anything. Some of the other thing that is a little bit different is sponsored companies basically have to pay up front now before they've met anybody and before they've, it was so like if we got somebody into Gauntlet before, everybody walk away like, how many can I get? And you'd have to be like, not really anybody.
Yeah.
And now we have to be like, hey, you don't really get to meet everybody and pick and choose. You have to commit up front, and then trust me, you're going to like the people on the other side. And it's really easy for the people who were boxed out of the last cohort, because there were a lot of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be a little bit different. But it gives me a lot more flexibility because I have to open it up to not just be wholly reliant on, small number of companies and for them to be able to have their pick to some extent. So there's a lot of nuance that goes into that, but I'm fronting all the costs now, so it's a different, maybe smaller.
Well, if I just want to say, I think I speak for all of us here and probably back at the rest of the cohort that if you ever need help with anything, just let us know.
I know you guys are all very highly paid now, so
yeah, we'll come by and help if you need anything. So
yeah,
happy to
that.
do so for sure.
Yeah, we'll be leaning on you guys. Plenty.
You're like, hey, I need
Don't
movers.
worry.
He's like, I need movers for the new event space.
Who can put together a desk?
Yeah.
I'm excited to see how the next one goes.
Yeah.
I think what better way to end off the pod?
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I think that's it for the Just Submit podcast. Thanks for everyone for checking in, and we'll catch up with you later next week.